race riots have broken out in Britain after the stabbing of children at a Taylor Swift dance class. It's led to hundreds of people being arrested, already given years of prison sentences out. So I guess, I mean, this is obviously horrifying. The entire story is horrifying. Why do you think that this lit such a spark, that this stabbing lit such a spark to create protests that have gotten this big?
Well, I think it all boils down to misinformation and ecosystem of fear that the right wing in Britain has culminated and furnaced for a long time. And people have been very quick and eager to blame immigrants for any problem that happens in the country. And so when this stabbing happened, 3 children died, 8 more were injured. It happened in a town called Southport, and the police were not quick to release the name of the person who did it. And this could be because it's not the police's role to release the name. It could be a judge's decision. If the person is under 18, then the judge has a higher vested interest to not release the name.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of reasons why the name might have not been released. And with the name not coming out, right-wing provocateurs, specifically a guy named Tommy Robinson, who is, if you live in the UK, you know him very well. He is a big spreader of misinformation, propaganda, anti-Muslim sentiment. He's one of the biggest Islamophobes coming out of the United Kingdom. And he spreads this fake information that's insinuating that the person who did the stabbing was a Muslim asylum seeker. Again, there was no basis for this. We did not know anything about him, but this starts getting spread around. And once that starts getting spread around, before the official name or the official story gets released, we get those 100 people coming on Southport. And they start burning mosques, throwing bricks into windows. They attack a hotel that was housing migrants.
Yep.
And they even target and get angry at the police because they think the police are a part of a cover-up. And they think the police are now against the British people and siding on the side of Muslim immigrants that have invaded, quote unquote, their country. Later, it comes out that the perpetrator was not an asylum seeker. He was a 17-year-old, so he was under 18. He was born in the United Kingdom to Rwandan parents who were Rwandan immigrants from 20 or so years ago.
Yeah.
So he was just a British guy born in the UK. But they made it out to go and attack asylum seekers for it.
Do you think that the fact that these turned into the violent and large protests or riots that they did turn into is what the leaders of this far-right movement were looking for? Because I kind of feel like this is going to backfire.
I think this is a nightmare for the right-wing movement in the United Kingdom.
It gets them attention, but it also, it's like their strategy, I would think, is kind of slowly seeding their ideology into the population.
Well, we've talked about this before with the Alternative for Deutschland in Germany, and we always say the next wave of fascism is going to come with hearts and hugs.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's their only way to get power. And so when guys hit the streets, and as we'll talk about, they were doing Nazi salutes in the streets. Like these guys, what's the name of that group that was out there?
Oh my goodness.
National Defense League?
Yes, I think it's the
British
English National Defense League. I'll find
something
it.
like that. Just, the furthest right people in the country going out and being violent against groups of people that did no wrong and did no harm except for being brown. And so what while the right wing led by Nigel Farage in Britain didn't want the violence, they most certainly caused it, whether they wanted it to happen or not. At least that's my position. Because Nigel Farage has done plenty of press conferences in front of these hotels where asylum seekers were being held, pointing to the building and saying, that's the source of your problems. That's where all your money's going.
Yep.
And so when something bad happens and the misinformation ecosystem makes you think, oh, asylum seekers killed 3 children, you're going to go and you're going to want to burn down that hotel if you're predisposed to that type of racist thinking. Yeah, I just think Nigel Farage holds a lot of blame for this, and a lot of people who supported reform, who may not want to see the violence, I think they have to reckon with this, and they gotta question themselves a little bit.
Okay. I would hope so.
Whether or not they do or not is a different.
Exactly. It's probably too easy for them not to. One thing that I loved is Prime Minister Keir Starmer's response to this. He said, "People in this country have a right to be safe, and yet we've seen Muslim communities targeted, attacks on mosques, other minority communities singled out, Nazi salutes in the street, attacks on the police, wanton violence alongside racist rhetoric. So no, I won't shy away from calling it what it is, far-right thuggery." Love that he just hits it head on. That is exactly correct. I'm also glad that we're already seeing harsh prison sentences handed down, because these riots turned into not just attacking mosques or places where asylum seekers were staying. It turned into attacks on the police that were trying to quell the riots, and that cannot be tolerated.
No.
So people have already gotten years in prison. I think that's exactly what needs to happen.
Yeah, and it needs to be swift. It needs to be swift. It needs to be hard. I also want to talk about how I'm fairly impressed with Starmer's response. I really like the way he went at it head on. There was no mincing of words.
Yep.
And I think that that's one of the benefits that we're going to see over the next couple of years about having the Labor Party in government. I think it might actually do some good at quelling a little bit of the far right, because we're going to have somebody at the top of the British government calling it out for what it is.
Okay.
Not mincing words. I think that's a really good thing. I think it could pull some moderate Tories away from the brink of maybe turning towards reform.
Do you not think it could also have the opposite effect of further radicalizing those that are already leaning that towards the far right?
I don't know. I think the far right has done a lot of damage to themselves with this.
Okay.
I think they've done a lot of damage to themselves. I think it's a travesty that they're going after innocent people. I mean, there were reports of a young girl and her family having to hide underneath the bed.
Yeah.
Closing the blinds. Their car got destroyed.
Yeah, and I feel like it's also just a terrible look that they're doing this as a misinformed response to basically a massacre of children at a dance class.
Yes.
Like,
it has nothing to do with asylum seekers.
No.
Nothing to do with it.
Well, it just looks like you're looking for a reason to go kill immigrants.
Yes. And they're just waiting. They're just waiting for that opportunity.
Yeah.
I also want to call out a little bit of right-wing, American right-wing politicians here, because J.D. Vance was recently asked about something about the spreading of Islam, and he says that the United Kingdom has become the first Islamified nation, and since the Labour Party won power. And that is such hateful, disgusting rhetoric coming from a maybe soon-to-be American vice president.
I want to be careful about how we describe that, because I'm sure his intention...
Oh, he giggled.
Was to be... Okay. Was to be hateful. But it being... Calling something... The idea that something has become Islamified, I feel like our point is that would be okay.
Yeah. Oh, hopefully. Right. It will be fine if a country happens to be Islamic. That's not the problem.
Exactly.
But the way he's saying it is like, ew.
Like they've been tarnished.
They've been been taken over. They've been conquered.
Yes.
And that's the word.
Their blood has been poisoned.
Right. And that's just Trump rhetoric. That's not. That's why
I didn't come up with that off the top of my head.
That's like Trump's literal thing. He said that the immigrants are poisoning the blood of the country.
Yes.
And so that's what's happening across the world right now. And so when we look across the ocean. And, some Americans can be like, wow, look at those hateful British people. We have it here too, guys.
Totally.
And they're at the top of the ticket. And we have to be ready to deal with stuff like that. I want to talk about really quickly the Reform Party. They got like 5 seats in the last British election. We did a whole breakdown of the last British election. The only places where they won were areas where the white population was greater than 94% of the constituency.
Wow.
So it is a very racialized party.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
And we'll see. I hope Starmer is able to crack down hard on these guys. I hope they get tough prison sentences. I hope that we're able to do something about the spread of misinformation, because Elon Musk actually responded to a lot of this. And he said that the UK has no choice but to descend into civil war. And Elon Musk also... Yes. Elon Musk then boosted the account saying that the stabbing was done by an asylum seeker to his 190 whatever million followers.
Dude, Elon Musk has become a dangerous person. That is absolutely absurd. I'm glad that the UK has gun restrictions that are way harsher than ours, because there can be no civil war in the UK. Let's be entirely clear.